Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to my new YouTube channel, Patrick Goes Wild. You are tuned in to Wild and Live. Welcome. It's good to have you guys back. Today we're going to be doing something really interesting, but just a quick mention to all of you that have been sending in questions whilst we've been going on these streams. We've had some really amazing ones, some great curious questions. Let's see, we've had over the last 2 weeks we've had some come in from one from Mateo Jackson Kavanaugh, who asked, why don't penguins' feet freeze? A question came in from Lawe Sosa, if I'm getting that correctly. Why are whale sharks easy to track? Are whale sharks easy to track, and how do you find them? And we had another one from Ellie K. Jameson, who asked, why do cheetahs run super fast? Those are just some of the questions that we've answered on some of the previous shows. So if you'd like to find out the answers to them after this episode, go ahead and take a look. For the first time viewers of you out there, thanks for joining us on Wild and Live. What is Wild and Live all about? Well, we are exploring the animal kingdom, and we're going to be looking at some of the coolest, the freshest, the pengest. Can I say that? I think I can. Cool. Pengest. I'm saying it. The pengest animals on the planet, that we're also getting to meet some of the fantastic people that get to work with these animals. So that's biologists, conservationists, and filmmakers. And we've got a fantastic lineup for you next week. It's going to be a super cool week. On Monday, we're going to be joined by zoologist and conservation biologist Lara Jackson, who, as a dolphin research manager, probably has one of the most enviable jobs in the world. She's going to be telling us what it's like She's going to be sharing some of her conservation stories from Zanzibar, where she gets to save and even sometimes swim with dolphins. Incredible. Then on Wednesday, we're going to be joined by biologist, explorer, and filmmaker Dan O'Neill. He's going to be sharing his wildlife adventures from expeditions to some of his favorite countries, one of which is Guyana. We're also going to find out about the challenges of finding rare species that he likes to call wildlife holy grails. That's going to be awesome. And finally, on Friday, adventurer and marine biologist and marine scientist Charlie Young is going to relive the moment a leisurely stroll on the beach in Oman. She was on holiday, taking a stroll on the beach, turned into a full-blown rescue operation where she came across a huge green turtle that somehow found itself stuck between two massive boulders, and she and her friends had to rescue this turtle. The clock was against them, so we'll find out how all of that went. Make sure you, if you're interested in those, make sure you have a look after this episode is finished. Go on to the scheduled list of episodes and take a quick look, get them into your schedule. So what about today? Well, we're doing something a little different. As most of you already know, usually I have a guest that streams in and we have a little chat. But today I don't have a guest. I have a kind of request of sorts. Now, this has come in from one of our viewers. He's been learning all about the animal kingdom. Noah Shentufi is 6 years old. What's up, Noah? How you doing? You all right? And he and his class at Thornhill School, hello Thornhill School, have been learning about animal groups. Now, they've got the job of making their very own fact files. Of course, no animal fact file would be complete without images, pictures, diagrams, which they have to use. And their job is to make this fact file write about those animals, what they eat, whether they're carnivores, herbivores, omnivores, where they live in the wild, and finally, whether they live in big groups or small families. So Ben and everyone at Thornhill School, I mean, it sounded like so much fun. I thought I would get involved and I'd get stuck into to give you a helping hand, or at least try to. You probably know more than me, to be honest. It's been so long since I looked at animal groups, so I'm not going to lie. I've got a whole bunch of notes here to help me out and to help you out. So let's get into it. I figured we'd start with the animal group that actually, before I get started, let me just double check that we are still going out. We're still going out. Fantastic. If you have any questions, make sure you ask them. There's a little box down there. Any questions that you have, send them in and I'll see if I can get to them as I go through these animal groups. Okay, we're 5 minutes in. Let's see how fast we can do this. So yeah, let's start with the animal group that I find the most easiest to remember, and those are mammals. And the reason why I find them the easiest to remember is because we as humans are mammals, and you can spot a mammal by looking for certain characteristics. The first is that all mammals are warm-blooded. They don't rely on external sources of heat to keep them warm. We get all of that energy to keep our bodies warm from our food. We give birth to, I say we, mammals are covered in hair and fur. They give birth to live young. And mothers also allow their young to suckle. Mothers produce milk for their offspring to suckle on, to get lots of nutrients, lots of nutrition. Now, I have to say there are some exceptions. So this gets a little bit it's funny because all these groups have definite definitions, but then, yeah, you've got some exceptions. So let's have a look. Two exceptions that I want to talk about with mammals. The first being pangolins. Pangolins, unfortunately, are the most trafficked mammal on the planet. They are super, super endangered, but they are so beautiful. And I think that's partly why they're under threat. They are the only mammal to be covered in scales. They looks like something. I made a post the other day and kind of compared them to. They almost look like a henchman. That's just next to an evil lord. Yes, sire. No, they don't actually talk like that. They are incredible, beautiful animals. They're covered in scales. The only mammal to be covered in scales. Other than them, most mammals are covered in skin, hair, and fur. Then we've got the issue of giving birth to live young. Now, there is the exception, a group of animals called the monotremes. Monotremes include echidnas, and probably the most famous monotreme, the duck-billed platypus. Now, the duck-billed platypus, to me, I always remember thinking that it was one of the most beautifully bizarre animals on the planet, because it looks like it's been put together. It looks like it's made up of different animal parts. So it's got the beak, the bill of a duck. It's got a tail that resembles that of a beaver. It's got fur on it like an otter, but then it's got webbed feet, but then it's also got claws. I mean, it's seriously it's a seriously odd animal, but I like to be a bit nice. It's beautifully bizarre. And they are mammals, but they lay eggs. I like to think that the platypus, when all the other mammals were evolving, the platypus kind of looked over and was like, man, all that giving birth to live young kind of seems a bit hectic. We're just going to lay eggs, because that is how platypus, or is it platypi, platypodes, platypus used to talk back then. But despite the fact that they lay eggs, they do produce milk. So they are very good parents. They look after their young. Now, some examples of mammals include some of your house pets: cats, dogs, cows, lions, hyenas. What else? What else? Rhinos. Dolphins and whales. Now, get this. I found out recently that apparently in the first month of a dolphin and whale's life, those calves don't sleep for the first month of their lives. What? I mean, I get super, super cranky if I don't have enough sleep after one day, let alone a month. So that is really, really impressive. So what else? We're going to move on. So those are mammals. We're going to move on to reptiles. So these are your snakes, your crocodiles, your alligators, lizards, turtles. Big visual giveaway for reptiles. They are covered in scales and they lay eggs. Although, again, we do have an exception. One of the exceptions is the Jackson's chameleon. They're native to the woodlands and forests of Kenya and Tanzania, and they do give birth to live young. And it's kind of interesting because they do actually have eggs. Those young start out as eggs inside the mother's body. They then incubate and develop, and then the mother gives birth to these live young. So very interesting. A female Jackson's chameleon can give birth to up to 30 young at a single time. I mean, I'm not going to do that, but yeah, super, super impressive. They are, let's have a look. Another big characteristic of reptiles is that Unlike mammals, they are cold-blooded. Now, this is something that you can't see in their outward characteristics, but you can see in their behavior. And I found that out during a filming trip to the United States, the big old USA. Me and my film crew had gone out to film rattlesnakes, and rattlesnakes live all over the Americas. So that's from Canada all the way into the States, through Mexico, and into South America, into Argentina. And they are one of the most venomous snakes. Their venom makes them one of the most deadliest snakes in the world. And the reason why they have venom is because they're trying to immobilize their prey. So they're ambush predators. They'll sit and wait for one of their prey to run by, let's say a rodent. As soon as it gets within striking distance, it'll quickly strike the rodent, inject its venom into the rodent's body, and let go. The rodent runs off, but then very quickly succumbs to the venom. The rattlesnake's then able to find the prey and then eat it without risk of being injured or having its fangs, which are really delicate. They're super sharp, but they're very delicate, having its fangs break or be destroyed. So we wanted to film this behavior, and we found the perfect spot. It was in the old drainage pipe, a corrugated drainage pipe that goes underneath this railroad track in the outback, or I should say the back country of Colorado. We were with a snake scientist, and we spent 2 days out there, 2 or 3 days. The first day we went out, it was really cold. It was a summer's day, but it was actually quite cold. We managed to find a rattlesnake, and it was curled up out in the open, and we're like, this is perfect. It didn't move for ages. In fact, it was so still, I managed to get down on the ground. I was like this on my belly about 2 meters from this snake. Do not try this if you ever come across a rattlesnake. They are super dangerous, and I was with a snake expert. Anyway, we managed to film, and then we came back the next day. It was a lot warmer, so we knew that the snakes would be far more active. I just didn't realize how active. We were walking along this path, and then out of nowhere, this rattlesnake just whipped across the path like lightning. And if I didn't say I had goosebumps on top of my goosebumps, I'd be lying. I was so scared. So that is a really good example of how reptiles rely on heat sources, usually the sun, to warm their bodies up and to get going. Now, not all reptiles are venomous. One that I think is really cool is are geckos. Geckos they have massive marble-like eyes, and they have the ability, the gravity-defying ability to walk on walls, even walk on ceilings, most surfaces upside down. And they get that ability through hair-like structures, projections on their feet called setae. So they are very cool. So that's reptiles. We're going to move on to amphibians. Let's see how much time we've got. Okay, 13 minutes. Okay, we're going to have to motor through this. Amphibians. Amphibians are a really interesting group of animals because they kind of lie somewhere in terms of their description of how you describe them. They kind of lie somewhere in between reptiles and fish. So that's because they spend most of the time in and out of the water. That's where they get their name amphibian. Amphibian means double life. They live both inside the water and outside of the water. So after laying their eggs, they have this larval stage. So they lay their eggs in the water, and those eggs eventually develop into a larval stage. The larval stage is a stage where the amphibian hasn't yet fully matured or fully developed into the adult stage. And the perfect example of this is frog spawn. If you go into a pond and you see frog spawn, it starts as a big clump, a big mass of eggs, and then those eggs eventually develop into tadpoles. Those tadpoles are the larval stages. And if you look closely, you can see these kind of frilly bits to the side of their bodies. Those are their gills. They use gills to absorb oxygen from the water into their bodies. But once they fully develop and mature into frogs, let's say, they are able to, they develop lungs, and so they're able to breathe air. So they're able to live, they have a kind of dual life cycle, both in the water and and on land. They are, let's have a little look. So they have very delicate skin, which is usually moist, but they, at the adult stage, they're able to use their skin to absorb both water and oxygen. They can breathe through their skin, but having this this soft this soft, delicate skin kind of makes them vulnerable. Vulnerable, one, to drying out, which is why they tend to stay near a water source, but also to predators. Their soft body's perfect for a bird to just snap up. So some amphibians have developed poison glands in their skin. If we take the poison dart frog, for example, extremely toxic. In fact, they are so toxic that Native American Indians, South American Indians use the toxic from the skin of the poison dart frog to coat the tips of their arrows, because it's that toxic. Their hunting arrows. Very, very cool. Okay, fish. Let's talk about fish. Fish are animals that live in water, in fresh water and salt water. They're covered in scales, which are often coated in a layer of slime, and that slime is there to help ease the movement through the water. They want to be as both streamlined, but also they want to reduce the drag from moving through the water, so they use less energy to move around. Now, really exciting, because even though fish don't have legs in the traditional sense, they have fins to help move them through the water. Some fish do have the ability to walk on land. I know it seems absolutely bonkers. Probably the most well-known fish that has the ability to walk on land is a mudskipper. Mudskippers use their front fins to literally walk out of the water. It's incredible. They can walk out onto seaweed, rocky seaweed, through mud. Some mudskippers are even known to be able to climb mangrove trees. Just a fantastic, spectacular ability. I'd say for a fish, it's probably even a super ability. Some of the biggest fish are also some of the most ferocious, but also some of the most gentle. So on one end, you've got animals like the great white shark. The great white shark is the biggest predatory fish in the world. It hunts for other animals. Its prey include seals, and it typically hunts during dawn and dusk. And the reason why it hunts during that time period is because the sun's quite low. The angle of the sun means that it illuminates or silhouettes their prey, seals, from above really, really well. Sharks can swim up to speeds of, I think, 25 miles an hour. Let me double check my notes. What have I said here? 25 miles an hour, and they can launch themselves out of the water up to 3 meters into the air. And they use this kind of burst of speed, boom, to surprise and catch their prey. But despite their kind of ferocious nature, they are really, really important. They're super persecuted, which they shouldn't be, because even though they're predators, or as predators, as apex predators, they're really important when it comes to keeping a balance within the ecosystem. So if you remove all the sharks, for example, then those seals, their population would increase, and seals like to feed on fish, so that would put an immense pressure on the fish stocks that they eat. So it's really important that we protect and preserve both the ecosystems of sharks, but then also sharks themselves. On the other side of the spectrum, you've got whale sharks. We were talking about whale sharks earlier with wildlife filmmaker Lucy Wells. And whale sharks are the biggest fish in the world. They can grow up to about 20 meters. So imagine your local swimming pool, which is 25 meters, and going in there and seeing one massive fish take up the entire thing. They are super spectacular. They're amazing creatures. They have mouths that are about 5 feet wide, tiny little eyes, a massive tail. They look like spaceships flying underwater. And they feed in a completely different way. They move at about 5 miles per hour, and they are filter feeders. So they feed on plankton. Sometimes they feed on fish as well, but they are slow moving animals, and they're looking for animals or creatures that move even slower. So they'll come up from the deep, come up to the surface of the water, and swim through plankton blooms and filter out all that food. Let's move on to birds. So from the sea, we make our way to the air. Birds are warm-blooded animals. They lay eggs, as many of you will know. One of the features that makes them stand out is the fact that their bodies are covered in feathers. And those feathers typically have about 3 different functions. So the first is display. A really great example of a displaying bird would be birds of paradise. If you don't know what a bird of paradise is, or you haven't seen one, definitely write that down now. That is one that I would say you should check out. They have incredible displays. They have the males have these fantastical adornments, these feathers that kind of come out almost like a flower arrangement. Some of them have these really odd and strange tribal dances. They kind of bounce around like this, and that's the males trying to impress the females. So they use those feathers as a means of display and courtship. The other use of feathers is for temperature regulation. So when we look at a really big bird, like an ostrich, for example, ostriches they live in the savannas in Africa, so it gets really, really hot, but it also gets surprisingly cold at night. So they can use those big feathers to regulate their temperature. When it gets too hot, they open up those big wings and just kind of gently flap their wings to cool themselves down. They also use their feathers and their wings and their bodies to regulate the temperature of their eggs. And then finally, of course, you've got the final function, which is for flight. Most birds use their feathers for flight, not all of them. So again, there are some exceptions. The ostrich doesn't fly, emus, cassowaries, we were talking about them earlier, penguins. So penguins are kind of special because they don't fly in the air, but I like to think that they do fly underwater. Some people say that they fly underwater and they use their wings to propel themselves, much in the same way that birds in the sky that fly in the air do, but they use it in a hydrodynamic perspective. So they use their wings, they flap their wings underwater, and the same principle allows them to move forward, propels them through the water. So yeah, those birds have lost their ability to fly, to use their feathers for flight. But many birds do have specialized flight feathers, and that's what allows them to fly. Also, they have hollow bones. Having hollow bones means that they are lightweight, and that gives means that they use less energy to fly than if their bones weren't hollow. So very, very cool. Birds are, of course, some of the most maneuverable and agile creatures to greater skies. What else? You can find birds on every continent on the planet, and in pretty much every habitat. So that's from your deserts down to I say down, that's Antarctica, Arctic, the polar regions, freezing polar regions, wooded areas, forests, savannas, grasslands. In terms of what they eat, many birds are carnivores, so they'll eat insects, lizards, small rodents, owls, for example, they eat rodents. Others tend to survive on sugary fruits. Some will feed exclusively on sugary nectar. The hummingbird. Man, if you spot a hummingbird, that's a special day because they are so fast. Literally blink your eyes and you'll miss them. The cool thing about hummingbirds, a really fun fact about hummingbirds, is that most birds will generate lift from the downstroke when they flap their wings, but hummingbirds are able to generate lift on both what you might call the downstroke and the upstroke, and that's because they're able to turn their wings so that on the downstroke, which is sometimes actually the forward stroke, they're gaining lift, and then they turn it the other way and they're able to gain lift on the backstroke or on the upstroke. So really ingenious evolutionary strategy there from the birds, from hummingbirds. Okay, I think we've just got about enough time to mention our final group. Now, Thornhill School, if I'm correct, you will have listed this down, and I'm sure you've all got your hands up at home and you're screaming out, insects! But I'm going to do things a little bit differently. I'm going to call this final group mini beasts or inverts. Now, the reason I've done this is because technically insects have 6 legs. So some of you clever clogs out there might be thinking, well, okay, 6 legs. What about spiders? Spiders, of course, have 8 legs. So they wouldn't be part of the insect. And so this is how I like to look at it. It does get a bit complicated. So this is how I like to simplify it. All the other animals that I've mentioned so far, the 5 animal groups that we've mentioned, we've got mammals, reptiles, amphibians, birds, I'm missing one out, and fish, are all vertebrates. So they have a skeleton with a backbone. That's where they get their name from. The backbone, the spine is made out of small bones called vertebrae, and that's where vertebrates get their name. Mini beasts or invertebrates don't have a backbone or an internal skeleton. So that's why I've lumped them into one group, but they are an extremely varied group. If I've got this right, about 97% of all the different species on the planet are invertebrates. So you've got, excuse me, about to sneeze. So they are extremely varied. Let's have a look at my notes. So this is how I'm breaking them down. I'm breaking them down into 4 different groups. We've got our armored mini beasts. We've got our mollusks. We've got our ringed worms. And we've got our jellies. So if you want a real challenge, I would encourage all of you to include at least one mini beast invert in your fact file. Extra points if you're able to say what subgroup they're part of, whether they are a mollusk, a ringed worm, a jelly, or an armored mini beast. Get your teachers to help you out. This is a really tricky one, but it's really fun as well. So get your teachers to help you out, your family members. I'm sure they all struggle as well. So it's a really fun one. There are some examples to help you out. Quick examples of each of those 4 subgroups. Armored mini beasts usually have an outer exoskeleton. So a perfect example of that would be a tarantula. They would fit in nicely there. Mollusks are exceptionally varied. These are used to always catch me out. So you can put anything down from what can you put down? A snail, a slug, mussels, clams, squid, and octopus. Now you might be thinking, Patrick, what are you talking about? Squid and octopus are fish that live in the sea. They are not fish. They are part of the mollusk subgroup family. So yeah, that's definitely one that might catch some people out, but you can include octopus and squid. Worms, the ringworms, pretty self-explanatory. So you got earthworms, leeches, and then finally we have the jelly. So that's jellyfish. Again, they're not fish, even though they've got the name fish in their name. Jellyfish and sea anemones. Lots of living animals to choose from there. So we've just about made it through our group. Let's see what time. 27 minutes. I'm going to wrap up really quickly. Let's see if we have any questions. Let's have a little look. Larway says, why don't they sleep? I'm going to find out. I'm not too sure. This is a fact that I found out recently. I'm going to find out for you, Larway. Let's see. Anwar said, thanks for the shout out to Noah. Noah, awesome. Thanks for watching. And thanks to Thornhill School. Let's have a look. Ben Harris. Ben's a clever clogs. He says, dendrobatotoxin is my favorite toxin. Ben, tell me, I want to know which animal that toxin comes from and what does it use that toxin for? Mateo Jackson Kavanagh, have you heard of the water anole lizard? I have. It's one of my favorite lizards. Top animal there. Okay, so in conclusion, there we have it. Hopefully I've given you, Ben, and also your class, and for the rest of you watching, some inspiration when it comes to making your own fact files. Now, I had a go at making my own very quickly this morning. Let's take structure. They live in big prides, very big prides. That's how they're able to hunt so successfully. Let's see, I've got another fact. their family structure. They are solitary creatures. They are blind. Great fact about the olm, they can go up to 10 years without eating any food. And scientists believe they can live for up to 100 years. On average, they live between 60 and 70 years, but they can live up to 100 years. Brilliant animal. I didn't get time to make one fact file, as I told all of you, on mini beasts, but please, if you're making a fact file, please include at least one. What else have we got? I think that's all we've got time for today. I hope you've enjoyed this very special episode on animal fact files. Don't forget, if you like what you've seen today, hit that subscribe button, have a look through the videos that we've got coming up, and get them into your schedule. You'll also get a reminder if you click on those upcoming videos for when we're about to go live. Join us on Monday at 11 a.m. We're going live with Lara Jackson. She's going to be talking about animal conservation. Every time I get to the end, I always mess it up. We're going to be talking to Lara Jackson. She's going to be sharing her experiences working in dolphin conservation. My name's Patrick ARYEE. This has been Wild and Live. It's been a pleasure to have you join me. I will see you next week. Thanks for watching, and I will see you all next time. Take care.